Hi everyone, and welcome to The Whole Nine Yards, where we discuss everything AI, media and marketing. Joining me today is Scott Abbott, who is the Global Executive Creative Director here at 9 Yards Communications in Abu Dhabi. Now today we're going to be discussing creativity in the AI era. And it's a topic that has evolved and moved on so fast you can't take your eyes off it for a minute. Depending on who you ask, it's created new possibilities for everyone across the globe, or it's setting up new barriers that have to be fought through and to a certain extent pushed back against in the modern world. Now, thanks for joining us, Scott.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, today we're going to be discussing creativity in the AI era. Creativity has always been known as something inherent, instinctive, and almost like a craft, an art. Today, we're feeling that maybe those, depending on who you ask, those boundaries are beginning to be blurred with AI tools being available to pretty much everybody. Now, first of all, just going back to our days, I mean, we can remember the days before the internet with our grey beards and just thinking pre-AI, what was creativity to you?
I think originality used to be something that you arrived at. Today, it's something you need to fight for. So if we go back to what advertising and creativity used to be like before the digital era, you used to have different disciplines across the agency that, you know, were at the top of their game in regards to craft. So, you know, from a conceptual perspective, everything used to come from the heart and, you know, human based. And then that used to be passed on to our craft guys, the designers, the retouchers, and that is across all different touch points. And I feel that, you know, back in the day, you arrived at that big idea rather than punching in a few buttons and expecting it to be on your screen within seconds.
Mm-hmm. And again, just to expand on that slightly, obviously in terms of craft, do you feel like we might be losing that now, given, as you say, those at touch of a button, that, or is it something that can be embraced and used rather than something that is?
I think if you know, if everything is easy, if it doesn't feel earned, right? So you need to be able to fight for those big ideas and, you know, fight with your team about those big ideas and brainstorm and bang your heads together and you know, make sure that those original big ideas that you get to are original in their own right. And I feel that, you know, we're losing that a little bit, but you need to be able to earn that creativity back now.
Mm-hmm. And what does creativity mean to you now today, now that AI has entered the picture?
I don't think access equals originality anymore, right? I think that it's made it far too easy for people to develop ideas or, you know, or not using AI in the right way. From a creative standpoint, AI definitely has its place in an agency environment, but from a creative standpoint, you still need that human in the loop to be able to develop those big ideas and that originality. Otherwise, everything feels the same, right? It doesn't feel earned. You haven't fought for those big ideas anymore.
Now that these tools, as we say, are available to everybody, what separates a truly creative work from something that's just rattled into a keyboard?
Again, you know, when that brief lands on your table, and I tell my teams around the world all the time that, you know, when you get briefed on something, do not punch buttons and expect a big idea to come back. You need to be able to wrangle together to be able to deliver and, you know, fight against each other and fight for those big ideas. And that maintains the creativity and the originality in everything that we do. And I think that if we rely on that AI from a thinking perspective, we lose that originality. You know, there's nothing that is new anymore. And once you've lost that fight within yourself to be able to go up against it and sell those big ideas into clients as well as your teammates, everything just feels the same.
And do you feel that this is almost more philosophical, but do you feel that now that these tools are at everyone's hands, has it diluted or has it democratized creativity?
I don't think it's democratized creativity. I think it's democratized the content that comes out of that creativity. Like I mentioned earlier, I think that there's a place for AI in the creative department, but that's all about optimization and scalability and, you know, in that sort of area rather than original thinking. So from a content perspective, it's great. and be able to expand on those ideas, but creativity still needs to be coming from a human heart, and keep that human in the loop to make sure that those ideas are original at every stage.
And also, do you find that maybe as an editor, and also where you're looking and you've got your team's results coming back to you, do you feel that it has become a barrier where you've got to try and see, is that natural? Is that our creativity? Or is this something that's just been generated and the general public might be able to see through that as well?
I think because it's so readily available, it's made a lot of creatives and different agencies quite lazy.
What was the next task?
Laziness is it's the death of any creative agency. And the minute any creators become lazy because they feel that they can punch a couple of buttons into a computer and get a big idea out of it that they can go and sell to a client that agency is getting paid for, that's just stinks of laziness through and through. And if you go into the industry like I did 30 years ago, you have to fight for those ideas. You used to be up all night with your teams, in those offices, working through those briefs. And, what you're going to go and present to the clients at 7 o'clock the next morning with zero sleep, you feel incredibly proud of.
Mm-hmm.
That laziness breeds complacency in some respects. And that originality of those ideas don't come through anymore. It's just it becomes almost like a sausage factory mentality where the brief comes in, you get those ideas out, and you move on to the next one. The craft and the love and the fight have gone.
I always feel, as a former journalist, when I'd again been working on something, and you've got that feeling of elation and pride that you talk about, when you go, whoa, I've nailed that. I've really got that, And again, when your clients and when your readers have got that same, you get reception, and you know that you've nailed it when you do it.
Absolutely.
And do you feel that maybe personally, AI is a threat to that? How do you balance AI in your day-to-day work now that we know that it's everywhere and you can't ignore it? So how would you balance it?
We utilize AI to the best of its ability, right? And I think that AI can speed up the journey, but I decide where that journey stops in regards to AI. Every month I tell my teams that we take the same brief and we put that brief into AI, and we get some of the senior teams to work on exactly the same brief, and we put those ideas up side by side on a wall. And every single month you can see what's come from a human and what's come from a computer. So AI definitely has its place in the creative department, but it's not from the originality of thinking. It's more about the optimization and be able to scale that idea and expand on that idea. It's definitely allowed us to, cut those hours down per se on working on a brief. If we go back to your original question, back in the day, we'd have teams and teams of people working through the night and delivering that social piece, delivering what it looks like on TV, delivering what it looks like on outdoor. You'd have your retouchers busy away, sort of retouching, that final image that's going to be going on a 48 sheet, for instance. What is it? The craft from getting that director on board and crafting that script and bringing that to life on TV. It's definitely quickened up that process from an AI perspective, and it's
let you get some sleep at least.
Well, I don't know about that. It just allows for the number of briefs to come in a lot quicker. But it definitely, like I said, it's definitely sped up the journey. I've just decided where that journey stops now, and the original thinking always comes from the human. It's just that optimization, scalability, where we start to really utilize the power of AI.
Yeah, that kind of brings us nicely on to our next point, which is that AI, well, so far, can only generate from what already exists.
Yeah.
It isn't plucking things out of thin air.
Yeah.
How crucial is it that is still kept, as you say, the human aspect of coming up with the original idea? You talk about where the journey ends, but you also got to talk about where it begins.
Absolutely.
And does it begin with the human?
Yes. And I think AI doesn't make people lazy. What it's done it's exposed the people that are, right? So every agency has those guys who sits in the corner and collects their salary at the end of the month. And, and that's been happening for since time began. But it has exposed the people who weren't there in the first place, who didn't have an original thought in the first place. And I think that if you're using AI from an idea generation perspective, you're only designing from memory. You're not designing from originality. That conceptual rigmarole and that battle that you have with your team in order to bring that idea to life, it takes a lot of craft and a lot of time and a lot of thinking and a lot of passion to be able to bring that to life. And, guys who are just punching buttons on a computer or feeding the brief into an AI system or an AI agent and expecting to get something original and great that they can go and sell to a client the next day. Don't get me wrong, there's agencies that are doing it. We don't do that here.
No. And also, where is now the role of the creative, the person? Are they more of a director now, or are they still conceptualizing?
From my perspective, me and my teams, we're very much still on the conceptual train. We don't allow anything conceptually to go through an AI agent. Like I mentioned before, you can clearly distinct what comes out of computer versus what comes out of the human. But AI does play a huge part in every creative department now. It's just having the ability to identify where AI can sit and where AI works really well. And like I said, it's all about scalability and optimization to be able to, get that brief out the door a lot quicker, but not, not at the detriment of craft and ideas. So even if we're developing an image in AI, back in the day, we used to have to get storyboard artists in, to draw up those storyboards, and that would be a whole new process. Now we can, use AI to be able to develop those storyboards an awful lot quicker, but there's still a craft that goes into that. You still need that human in the loop to be able to say that's good and that's not good enough. So even when we're developing those storyboards, we need to make sure that everything is absolutely spot on, as if it was being shot for real in live camera, for instance.
Okay, and now we're going into a little bit of the guesswork here as we get towards the end. We've seen how quickly AI has evolved over the past 12 months, 6 months. I mean, you can't take your eyes off it week to week.
Yeah.
Now, from your personal opinion, where in, say, 2-3 years' time do you see AI?
I think, MarTech is a big buzzword around, the Western world at the moment. CMOs are being asked to do more for less. Budgets are being cut because they understand that AI does play a big role within every marketing department, and agencies are trying to keep up with that, and sort of bring AI into the forefront within that. And like I said, I think that, AI definitely has its place in every single agency, but more from an optimization and speed perspective rather than original thinking. And when you start looking at the MarTech side of things, when you start to use AI in the right way, it allows you to start monetizing it, right? So rather than using the upfront tools to be able to get to somewhere quicker, to be able to develop those ideas quicker, we can open up new revenue streams from a MarTech perspective. And what I mean by that is, you can create personalization at scale. So instead of talking to an audience on a mass scale, you can now talk to them on a one-to-one level, right? So if you go shopping in, I don't know what your favorite store is, but say it's Bloomingdale's, for instance. Bloomingdale's have a huge database of people, and when they advertise, they will be speaking to a mass market. What AI allows us to do now from a MarTech perspective is talk to you on a one-to-one basis. We know where you shop. We know the type of things you buy. Why don't we, sell you stuff that you already like and that we know that you're going to be interested in? And that's where AI is really cool. And that's where we can really start to monetize it and really go to town on it. Another aspect of it is output at scale. So if we've got a big client, a global client, and we're sort of sending out different pieces of work across the globe, different languages, different cultures, etc., we can now create one piece of work and feed it into that agent, and it will already spit out that creative in that different language at that different sizes that's right for that market. So that's where AI becomes really clever, and that's where we start to utilize it in the right way.
Ooh, there's definitely a lot to think about there. And as AI continues to evolve. I'm pretty sure we'll be back discussing this and we'll have a whole new take on it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Scott.
No problem.
And thank you for joining us as well, everyone. And we'll see you next time on The Whole 9 Yards.
Thanks for having me.